Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Create If Writing podcast.
Because you're not just going to say, we're going to create content and then share it to all the social medias.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost light. These restless thoughts.
Like I said, I'm not ready to choose a medium until I have a full-blown plan for it.
One by one the stars are disappearing from the horizon.
Hello and welcome to episode 32 of Create If Writing. I'm your host, Kirsten Oliphant, and we are going to talk all about inspiration and authentic platform building tools for writers and bloggers, and also creative entrepreneurs. I hate narrowing things down because I feel like, knowing my audience as I do, I have a wide variety of people in here. So I know that some of you are writers. I know some of you are primarily bloggers, and I know there are some people who are doing just totally other creative endeavors, and I welcome you all. I think the reason I attract such a sundry bunch is because I am kind of that way myself. I have my hand in a lot of pots. I think that's maybe the wrong expression for that. You can go ahead and let me know what the right expression is, but I'm doing a lot of things always, all the time, and I have a lot of interests. And so I think that comes through and attracts the same kind of people, or at least attracts a lot of people from a lot of places. But generally here on the podcast, we do talk about platform, whether it's social media or email lists, which is one of my favorite things to talk about because I'm a nerd. And I really also like just hearing from different people about what's inspiring them, what tools they are using, and how they are growing their own platform without being smarmy. So in today's interview, I am talking with Amy Schmidauer from Savvy Sexy Social. She is a phenom and has a really popular YouTube channel, and also really has done well on other platforms as well. I discovered her on her podcast, Social Authority. And she also hosts a Sunday Periscope called Sunday Scope Pass with Sue B. Zimmerman, which I know you've probably heard of her. She's the Instagram expert. So she is a lot of places. She's also blabbing, and her blog is fantastic as well. She rocks Twitter. But in this episode, we're talking about how you figure out which platforms you need to focus on. And her advice is actually not to focus on all the platforms, even though she is on all of them. So listen up and you can hear why she says that. But before we dive into the interview, I wanted to give a few brief updates. The first of which is that, as you may have noticed, if you're a weekly listener, I am probably going to be moving down to a twice a month kind of schedule, which is not ideal for me, but I have a lot of things I want to be doing and content that I want to be creating outside of the podcast. And right now, the podcast is taking up an inordinate amount of time, even with a good system in place. That's just kind of how they are. And since I don't have a ton of sponsorship, let's make that I don't have a sponsor. It's too much for me to hire out. So I'm doing all the editing myself. I'm also a control freak. We'll throw that in too. But in any case, right now, it's just not bringing back the return that it needs for me to spend 4 hours on an episode. Yes, I said 4 hours because, again, I'm a control freak, so I'm going in and really heavily editing every episode. Plus, the interviews take time as well. But I have some great interviews coming up for you. Today's is going to be amazing. And also, I have John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire coming up. I'm interviewing Joanna Penn this month. And I interviewed Twitter expert Madeline Sklar. I've just really got some great guests coming on. So we'll see what I can do. If I can throw in a bonus episode, I will do that on the off weeks, but we'll see what I get to. So that's thing number one I wanted to tell you about. Thing number two is that I am tomorrow, which is going to be February 10th, I'm speaking at the Amplify Summit, and I am super excited. This is an online summit. You can sign up today and watch it tomorrow, and it will be available for replay just through the end of the summit, which ends this week. So I will leave my link in the show notes. And if you do they do have some upsells and things that you can buy. If you do end up buying something through the summit, that will act as an affiliate link. But otherwise, the link that I will share is just a link to sign up to watch for free. And I hope you come see me. I'm talking with Jonathan Milligan from Blogging Your Passion all about email lists. And so he got to interview me, which is fun to be on the flip side for once. And just kind of talked about not being smarmy and how to grow your email list and grow your platform without hating it, because I think a lot of people do. So I'm definitely looking forward to that and hope you sign up if you are getting this anytime really the week of the Amplify Summit. I believe that it ends on the 12th. And after that, you'll have to pay to get access to the videos. So go sign up now and watch tomorrow on the 10th. I also am doing a really exciting free training with Kirsten of Sweet Tea LLC. And I think it's really funny that we're doing this training. She's Kirsten, I'm Kirsten. We spell it the same. So we'll totally confuse everybody in this live training that we're doing together. But she is a nerd about email as well. She uses MailChimp and has a really great book about that and how to just everything MailChimp, how to do everything MailChimp. So we're going to be training on how to up your engagement and get people opening and clicking and doing all the things that you want your readers to do. That's going to be next Tuesday, February 16th. And so I'll have a sign up link for that as well in the show notes, which you can find at createifwriting.com/032 because this is episode 32. One last thing is that one of the things that has been taking up my time lately is that I recorded an audiobook. And this was a first, and I'm sure I'll write about it after I've kind of finished the process and seen how my sales go and everything else. But I took last week and recorded one of my previous books that I published, which is Consider the Cross. It's an Easter devotional. So it may not be the kind of book that all of you would be interested in reading, because I know my whole audience is not a Christian audience, which is fine. I welcome all of you guys to listen in. But if you are and are interested in having some Lenten devotions to listen to each day, it's got 40 days of devotions. Each day is about 3 to 5 minutes long, kind of looking at the last week of Jesus's life in the Gospels. So I figured I could do an audiobook myself since I host the podcast and do the editing. And it was a giant pain. But now that I've done it, I'm like, yeah, I could totally do this again and again. So I will definitely share my experiences with you after I kind of have a little distance from it. But for now, I will leave the link in the show notes to where you can buy that. I have it. It will be up on iTunes and Amazon and Audible, but their processing takes way longer than you'd think. So I'm using a program called CD Baby to host the audiobook for now. So again, I'll leave the link in the show notes, createifwriting.com/032. Now, I want to dive into this interview with Amy Schmidauer from Savvy Sexy Social because it has some really great just insights and thoughts and tips for you if you're trying to figure out how in the world you can handle all the social media stuff when you're supposed to be so many places at one time. So without further ado, here's my interview with Amy. On today's episode, I'm talking with Amy Schmidauer from Savvy Sexy Social. How are you doing today?
Awesome, Kirsten. What's up, girl?
You have so much energy. I love it. I've
had a lot of coffee today just for you, honey.
Perfect. Me too. And I've got a cup right here. So I first came across you actually on your podcast, which I think is probably odd because I think YouTube.
Yeah, that is extraordinary.
Yeah, YouTube is sort of the hub of Savvy Sexy Social, but I kind of fell into podcasting. I think I was searching for social media and your podcast came up and then I went to YouTube. And so I came through the back door a little bit.
I like it. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I want to know, how did you get started and building your brand of Savvy Sexy Social?
So Savvy Sexy Social goes back to 2011, really 2010. That was about the time that I left we should say the cubicle, the full-time gig, and started working on my own. I'd been building the business on the side for about a year and a half when I decided to leave I left in late 2010, but really launched full-time biz in early 2011. So with that came, you need your own platform. You need to differentiate yourself. You need to create content so that others will know you exist and know that you know what you're talking about so that you could potentially be hired. And I wanted to be hired for social media marketing, consulting, and execution. So that's what I did. Savvy Sexy Social was the video blog I created to help myself stand out as a thought leader in the space. And it's been going strong ever since.
Now, how did you decide on YouTube as your platform?
I decided that way earlier. I've been creating video content for quite some time. I'm actually in the middle of writing my first book. And it's funny, I've actually been reflecting on all of these sort of beginning stages things quite a bit. But one of the first things that I really started doing was editing video. I just liked making videos that made my friends smile, and that was fun. And then when I was like, how am I going to be able to share these? Because we're talking about like 2008. 2007 was the first video I ever made.
Wow.
So it was like, where am I going to put these? And what's funny? I remember there being like some moment where I was like, you can upload video to Facebook. And I was like, I don't know if that's the right idea. And I was really liking, it's funny how that works, but I was really liking the people I was watching on YouTube. And as I was getting acquainted with the editing process and then seeing that people were living their lives vicariously, through the internet and all that kind of fun stuff, and you could follow along, and a trip to Target could be made to look like the most glorious thing ever with good editing, it was like, wow, this is interesting. I think I'll upload my videos here. So it was just by default. It was, right around the time I believe that they were being acquired by Google. And so it was really just happenstance. I chose them because it seemed like the upload process and sharing was easy. And to this day, it still is.
That's awesome. I love it when you have sort of like this weird skill or thing you do, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that like is a business now.
Yeah. Oh, it's a thing. And it's like, oh, what are your predictions for 2016? Well, just like every year, brands are going to finally start making video.
Yeah, I keep hearing
funny.
They're like, this is going to be the year for video. There was an ad that showed up in my Facebook profile, and it just made me giggle. And it was somebody that was like, video is now becoming the big thing. And I was like, I feel like video is still the big thing, but it is definitely not becoming the big thing.
Exactly. And it's like, how many indications did you need? And the latest one is 6 billion video views daily on Snapchat. And that is what's making brands go,
That's really interesting.
To me, that's saying, it's like, okay, mobile and accessibility to video period is just ridiculously easy. So the fact that you're not doing it yet and getting in front of those visual learners and visual followers is just unfortunate. So now that they're considering it, I really think that YouTube is going to be even more of a contender, because brands also enjoy the idea of investing in archives and content that's going to work for the long term. And YouTube is a great example of that. Some of the videos that have performed the best on my channel are old. And it's not because they went viral or they did really, really well in their first week. I have the most popular video on my channel only changed in the last 2 weeks, and it's a year old. So something that you created a long time ago can work very hard for you, especially because we're talking about the number 2 search engine on the planet.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize that YouTube is that. And just like Pinterest is a big search engine, like I don't think people think of it in that way. And so like that's just kind of shifted in the last year or so. But and Facebook, they like their native video. They want things uploaded there, and you have to do it Facebook likes. But now they just announced recently, as we're recording this, that they're going to be doing kind of a live streaming, like an option natively, kind of like Blab or Periscope or Meerkat right within Facebook, which is interesting. So I assume that will do well, because Facebook rewards things that it wants to do well.
Yes, very true.
I feel like it's
especially with uploading video period, not just this live movement, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'm interested to see how that will work, because I've done a little bit of the live streaming and it's really fun, but I feel like most of the people that are already familiar with me are not on like Periscope, for example. Like I found new people there, but if I'm able to live stream through my page or through, my little group that I have, like that would be super effective. So I'm interested to see how that goes. But my prediction is it's going to be fun and fantastic because of Facebook.
For sure. Well, Facebook is amazing because of organic reach, and discoverability is awesome when you have that opportunity there. And when they like the content that you're creating, they will give you that reach or give you an opportunity to get even more. That's why we keep getting these pop-ups now as brands saying, this piece of content is doing on average better than the rest of your crap. So we would like you to promote it and pay, because you've already proven that this works. And now if you pay to promote it to more people, we will pimp it out for you. And that's how they're making their money, which is great. With video, though, it's interesting because even though I haven't paid Facebook, at least in the last few months, I've dabbled in some ads here and there, but uploading video content straight to my brand page has gotten me so much free organic reach. I haven't had to pay them anything. They want me to pay because they're like, oh, your videos are pretty good. People are liking them. But the same thing's going to go with live streaming. It's literally just the fact that this is the largest search engine, social network there is, and everyone's on it. And you truly have the ability to access your audience there. You just have to think bigger about how you talk to them. And Facebook is willing to help you do that, but they're a business too.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, people keep complaining like, oh, I don't want to do it, but you do. I mean, the reality is it's a business. They're going to run the business how they want to run the business. It was awesome when we didn't have to pay to have things seen, but now that's just not reality.
It was awesome, but it was like, oh, by the way, you're running a business and you're profiting off of this. So, for you as a brand to say that social media is unfair because it should be free, just like it was meant to be for the average user, it should be that way for brands as well, then, shame on you for calling that a vast majority of your marketing department because you're too lazy on every other front. Quite frankly, it's just, it's frustrating when you do say that you don't want to pay for social media, because this has been the struggle since the beginning. That's why I said I was doing social media execution when I first went into business for myself, because the only way I could convince a brand to hire me was for them to outsource it completely to me, because they didn't believe in it, much less to believe in consulting and a strategy, and then for them to execute it in-house. So it's been a really long struggle to this, but it's incredible how well billboards and TV are still doing.
Yeah, I find that really weird. I'm like, oh, there's ads on television. We don't really watch television, so
I don't even have cable. I just moved into a new apartment. I have Apple TV, and if I have an ad on my TV, it's because of whatever app I'm watching, if there's something integrated. But for the most part, everything is a subscription model that I'm paying.
Absolutely. We're the same way. We just Netflix or, we have Amazon Prime. So any of those videos, we don't actually watch TV. So I'm like, oh yeah, there's ads on there.
Right.
I feel like the world has changed so much in the last 5-6 years, in this crazy way. So my question then to you is, with all these different platforms, how have you, and then how do you think people can figure out which ones should they be on? Because you cannot do all of them. But it's really hard to decide and kind of differentiate between them. So what has worked for you in terms of making those decisions, and what might you recommend for people?
Well, it's funny because up until for a really long time, the very clear-cut answer to this is, who is your audience and where do they hang out? But when you're talking about Facebook that has more than 1 billion users, we're monthly active billion, users. Yeah. Instagram, I think, is at 400 million active users, and Twitter is 300. It's a situation of, okay, your audience is there. So where are they? What are they talking about is more the question. And then you need to factor in context of platform, because you're not just going to say, we're going to create content and then share it to all of the social medias. Everything is going to have its own context where you share it. So if your main strategy, let's say, is to simply answer questions of your target customer, by far and away, the best place to do that quickly and easily is Twitter, because it's searchable. You can find the kinds of questions that your audience is asking, find them, talk to them, answer their questions, and not even have to create any other content. Just write an answer down and tweet it back to them. And you can build an audience that way on Twitter. And that's very effective. But if your idea is that you want to create video content, then you're saying, okay, well, how long are the videos? Because if they're longer than 30 seconds, not going to be great on Twitter. And Twitter video is still something to experiment with, but what we're not really sure yet. And if it's longer, then why not invest in your archives, which makes YouTube a great contender. And then it's also great for Facebook, because Facebook is pimping it out like crazy. It's not going to live as long as a YouTube video will, because a YouTube video that's doing well in search will stay in that search result on the front page for a very long time. Facebook, you have the longevity of a status update. And if a status update is doing well, how long will it be there? So what is the content and who is your audience? And then what's the context of sharing that content? Because all of those things are going to decide where you're going to be to talk to your audience. And it's okay if you're not everywhere. I really hope that you choose one. Start somewhere. Don't start with 5 social networks because someone said YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. Join all of them. Okay, great. Now you're spread thin. You're going to be mediocre at best on one of them, instead of absolutely crushing it. And you should aim for absolutely crushing it, because even if your audience is like, oh, you're not on Twitter? Like, no, we're not, but you should see our Facebook page. That is a much better argument than, yes, of course we're there. We'll reply to your tweet in less than 5 days.
That makes a lot of sense. And, I think for some people too, it depends on the tools. Like, do you have the tools to edit video? Because don't choose YouTube if you don't know how to shoot video, if you don't have any of the equipment. I mean, you can get all those things. So just know if you're going to choose video, for example, or, earlier this year, I launched my podcast. can you do that? And I had to sit down and be like, okay, I think I would love podcasting. What does it take to actually set it up? And I went through John Lee Dumas's free podcast course and was like, okay, yeah, I can buy this stuff. Yeah, I can figure this stuff out. And what I don't know, I can do, and jumped right in because I was kind of considering video as well. But the video editing, every time I sit down with editing video, I just want to like set my computer on fire. And so one day maybe we'll get there, or we'll just pay someone to edit. But for now, you do have to kind of choose where your people are, but what can you manage? Like what is scalable for you in terms of that?
Exactly.
And I was really excited. So I was listening to the podcast. I told you that's how I found you, but I was listening to your podcast, I guess it was like a month ago? And I could hear in your voice, I was like, oh no, she's leading up to, this is the end of my podcast. And I was like, no. And then
that's sad news for you today,
really
even though the title of this
sad.
podcast is exciting.
Yes. And so, okay, so why don't you walk us through kind of what happened, cliffhanger here, guys. Hold on tight to see what happens.
You should go and listen to the episode.
No, they should. What happened with your kind of podcasting situation?
Well, I'm going to be completely honest, and I have been since the beginning. The podcast has always been customer service for the video audience. You are a unicorn because not many people discover me through the podcast. It's absolutely possible. I optimize like crazy, but it's very competitive and it's an uprising space. So you really have that new and noteworthy time to be discovered and grow, and hopefully it'll kind of catapult you from there, which is the first 8 weeks of a podcast on iTunes. And I believe Stitcher has its own sort of new and noteworthy. Haven't paid much attention to them, unfortunately, but yeah. So it went for about a year, and I've taken a break here and there, nothing crazy, but there was even a point where I was publishing twice a week. There was sort of this like Monday Muse where I would talk for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just me, and just say like, look, this is what's going on, or this is how I'm feeling today, or this is... I just realized that people that watched the videos wanted to hear more of me uncut and wanted to hear just a regular point of view every once in a while, and not sort of like this quick tip that I'm compiling into a searchable YouTube video. So that was really why I started the podcast. And the thing is, I love to edit video. I hate editing my podcast, and it is so much simpler than editing the video, but there's just something about it that's just not as fun for me. And it's not because I'm addicted to looking at myself in the camera. I'm literally like just not as fulfilled by it. There's not comedic timing. It really is just a chat, which is fine. But for editing, it's not as fun. So I think I just got tired of it. And the reason you get tired of something is because you start to forget your why. And I knew my why, and I knew my why was, this is customer service for my video audience, or anyone in my audience that just loves my, the way I think about things and wants to hear that, and maybe wants to agree or disagree, but still wants to hear it and subscribe to it on a regular basis and listen passively. There's a lot of opportunity in passive listening, which is why podcasting is so incredible. And I fully believe that. But, I just started to get sick of it, I guess. And the biggest reason of that was not just, losing the why a little bit, even though I knew it. It was more just, okay, I know why, but why is that helping me? Like, why is that helping me today? Because it has to be mutually beneficial. It has to be great customer service for the video audience, but I'm also pretty killer at customer service with my videos. So I started to think like, okay, this is really just an extra thing I'm doing every week, and it's taking hours out when I'm measuring minutes these days. And so that's where my head was. And I spoke to a great friend and mentor of mine, Chris Ducker, from the You&nbsp podcast, formerly it was some other business kind of name.
Yeah, I can't remember either. I was trying to think, but I can only remember You&nbsp because that's such a great name.
It was great. Yeah, he changed to You&nbsp, and it was great because I talked to him. We were in Manchester speaking at the same event a couple months ago, and I just said, Chris, dude, I hate my podcast. And he's like, stop doing it right now. And I was like, no problem, because I already missed one. And he was like, just stop doing it, because I've been where you are and I stopped doing it. And yes, you're going to be set back if you decide to get back into it, because you take a pause and you upset the audience when you do that. And I know full well about that, because it's something I preach about video content. You don't want to pull back when you have, a loyal audience that's very excited about what you're doing. But he said, when I came back to it, it was it was a hard road back, but it was still so much better because I was refocused around it. And so I thought, okay, great. I was ready to say, okay, I'm going to do one more podcast and I'm going to let everyone know that I'm done, because I was just convinced. But with my membership group kind of picking up speed, it suddenly occurred to me that the podcast, where I have already sort of tailored the experience to be, let me continue the conversation with my video audience in a longer format, those are the same people that would think about joining my membership group. So I thought, okay, maybe there is something to this podcast. Let's think this through some more. And Blab also, kind of came to the table. And I thought, this platform's incredible. And Kirsten, you know this. It's incredible that you can get in this room and have such an easy video conferencing format in a public forum and with a chat. And that's so fun to build hype around something, specifically a podcast, especially a podcast that's way out of new and noteworthy and really needs any help it can get to be promoted. My numbers are fine, but I'm used to looking at my numbers on YouTube. So it's still disappointing a little bit. But yeah, I think with the combination of Blab and my membership group and getting refocused around this idea of the social funnel, which I preach, where do people discover you in rented space, which is what social media is? How do you get them to your owned assets, which is your website and your blog and your content, and then get them on your database, which is your email list, and then use that database to create real leads for your business. And I knew the podcast was a lead generator. So with all of the things aligned in the social funnel, suddenly the why made a lot more sense, and it had multiple whys, because now the podcast is really focused around driving traffic to that membership group. And that's when I came back, and what was supposed to be, guys, I'm done with this stuff, turned out to be, hey, the podcast is being rebranded, and I'm very excited that it's going to be changing a little bit in gears. But, for the most part, the format's the same. It's just that it kind of has a new purpose, and that might redefine who the guests are. And so that's what the Social Authority podcast is today, previously known as the Marketing Lifestyle Show.
I love that. And Blab, like as you mentioned, and we were supposed to record on Blab, but I've had a couple of incidents where it doesn't work well in my house. It's still in beta, and so there are just these crashes.
I'm waiting to get a brand new computer to work with Blab, because Blab just brings down Chrome so hard if you don't have the RAM to run this thing.
Absolutely. I've just had too many issues where I was like, okay, I don't want to have this time set up to record something. And then also I haven't, because I'm doing my own podcast editing, I have not edited audio they have sent back yet. So I'm like, what is this going to be like to edit? So anyway, I was like, too many variables. But the cool thing about using that for podcast interviews is that you're getting really so much mileage out of the same content, because you're going to have people that show up on Blab who are just on Blab that see it. And also the people that already follow you on Blab are going to watch that, and they may not be podcast listeners. And that's the cool thing, is that you may get totally separate audiences listening to the same content where you're doing, no extra work, and you're getting all of this from it, which I think is fantastic. And like you said, it's a great space. It's so easy to use if you don't crash your computer, and it looks so professional, where Periscope is really fun and informal, and I really enjoy that. And I know you have, Scope Past Sunday, which happens on Sundays, and clearly, which is a lot of fun. A lot of times Periscope seems like super way too informal. Like I've tuned into ones, I'm like, oh, you're in your closet. Like, okay, that's cool. And
people are taking a little bit too much advantage of like live streaming. It doesn't mean that, you don't have to try a little bit. And I struggled with it at the beginning because like I said, like I'm not ready to choose a medium until I have a full blown plan for it. So when I was dabbling in Periscope and really, again, dabbled in Meerkat before that, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, look, I happen to be somewhere fun right now, and that's the only reason why this is happening. So check it out, and then I'm done. But then, Periscope is a very different experience than Blab, because Blab is the epitome of collaboration, while Periscope is really like you're on your own, and you're also maintaining a chat by yourself. So it's a little bit overwhelming personally to someone like me that just loves talking to a camera like it's a person and just ripping through some ideas and then cutting it down into a final product. But I do see the opportunity with all of these live streaming platforms, because live is where everything happens. It's why the salesman wants to call you on the phone. It's why I want you on my webinar. It's all because we're trying to sell something. And in the live format, it is going to be more effective because someone is more compelled by you and more emotional in that moment. So the live streaming social aspect is what makes this so interesting in terms of social selling or just social marketing, period, because somebody is more likely to think in that period of time that they're ready to make that commitment because there's so much of a personal connection involved.
And I have a lot of writers in my audience. And I think for someone who is, writing a novel, in the past, I feel like before social media, these writers, my favorite writers, I had no idea who they were. Like I'd read that little bio in the back and that's all you get. Whereas now there's this opportunity, unless you went to a book signing or something. Mm-hmm. And, that's not scalable for writers to do book signings in every city in America to meet every fan. Whereas now you can go on and the smart writers are making themselves available because I think as people, we have this natural curiosity and we're much more likely, like I'm much more likely to be a super fan of a writer if I read the book, love it, and then also find them accessible on social media. And that's probably a generational thing, but for we're moving to a new generation. So
Absolutely.
For younger people, and I'm not super young, I'm 38. I had to think about that. I was like, I think I just had a birthday. I'm 38. For people my age and younger, you want that connection and it makes that writer so much more personal. It makes you much more likely to kind of invest in a fuller way because you get to see that side. So whether it's, through recorded video or live video or any of these places people can connect, it really does make a difference and kind of takes people to that next level, which is cool. And, even though like we talked about, you have to, in a lot of places, pay to play, there's also so much free availability to just, build that platform. And I talk to a lot of writers and kind of encourage them like, hey, you're writing a book. Great. Don't wait till it's done to build your platform. Like Connect right now, even if you aren't promoting like the book yet because you're writing it, which it's you can do. But
that's exactly what I say to people that are like, I don't have a website yet. So maybe we should wait. Okay, you could do that, but you're actually in better shape than somebody that has a website because they're going to immediately default to pimping it out instead of going and having conversations, which is what you should be doing either way. So same thing with being an author. Maybe your book's not done yet, but my book's not done yet. And I'm talking about it like crazy. And I'm also just talking to people about what they care about. Those conversations that happen are going to be so much more meaningful when they're not coming at you with this ulterior motive. We all have one. We're not hiding from that. It's just that, give yourself an opportunity to just build relationships. That's what you're doing. So if you have nothing else to promote, just keep promoting how awesome of a human being you are. And then whatever you want to sell, people are going to be that much more interested in checking out.
And actually that you are a human being. And I think that's kind of what comes through all these forms of social media, that you're able to be human and be personable to people, unless you're just not personable. And then maybe you should stay on something without video, like just tweet,
But again, personable does not mean extrovert either.
That's
and
absolutely
I think
true.
What's frustrating about this industry sometimes, or not even the industry, but just social marketing from start to finish, is really that so many people rest on their laurels when it comes to, I can just sit in front of a computer and be the coolest person in the world. And then you get them in person and it's like, who are you? You really need to understand that there needs to be a level of expectation about who you are. And that needs to be your brand online too. But just because you're personable doesn't mean you're an extrovert. I'm as introverted as you get, honestly, in my opinion. I love just running back to my bedroom and hiding to read a book. I'm like, okay, I'm done talking to people. I don't feed off of people's energy. I exert energy by being around people and having conversations. That doesn't mean you're going to get less of a person. I'm going to be as excited to talk about you and as in that moment as possible, but I'm going to need to have my time after we're done.
I'm totally the same way.
That's how it is.
I think that's really surprising to a lot of people. And it shouldn't be surprising to me about you, but it kind of is a little. But I think we all sort of assume if people are able to carry on these conversations and be peppy and vivacious and personable, that they are extroverts. So people are constantly surprised when I tell them I am, but I feel like I need an insane amount of time to recharge. Insane. And with 4 kids, okay. I just feel like I never recharge.
Yeah, I don't know that one, but yeah, no, that makes sense too. But I mean, it's also about being in your element and being comfortable and being okay with being comfortable in your element. You should have seen me the other day. I just moved into this apartment and I peeked my head out on a Saturday night and the new person next door is having a party and invited me over. And I was like, no. Like, I'm just like, oh, you didn't see me. Like, I'm just taking the dog out. Like, I don't have that level of being around people right now. I'm not mentally prepared, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to feel like you're less of a person just because you're not an extrovert. I actually wonder how extroverts like think straight about who they are and what they're doing, because I'm like, when do you ever just like chill?
I guess their chilling is the with other people part. And that's what makes no sense to me.
That's the mindset that I don't really get. It's not that I don't like being around people and I can't think bigger when I am. It's just sort of like I'm fielding a lot of different emotions in that moment.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how to better explain it than that.
Yeah, it's just kind of where the energy comes from. And for me, the energy is completely by myself. Like, I would be awesome. I told my husband, I was like, sometimes I like fantasize about being sent to prison, not for anything bad, maybe a wrongful conviction, and being like in solitary confinement. That would just be really relaxing. And he looked at me and then he was like, I've thought that too.
Oh my God. That's really funny.
So maybe that's a product of having way too many children. I don't know. But in any case, that's like the epitome of being an introvert, just confessed here on the podcast. Well, I want to finish up hearing about, I like to ask people what's inspiring them, whether that's something hugely deep or something just totally off the cuff, because inspiration comes from everywhere. So is there anything in particular that's inspiring you this week?
I don't know when you're publishing this, but I will say that I always get inspired by a new year. And I'm particularly inspired about 2016 because I think 2015 was a very big year of focus for me and I accomplished a lot of goals. And I'm very pleased I can say that because I don't know. Usually I look forward to a new year because I'm like, man, I could have got a lot more done this year. But I don't feel that way about 2015. I do think it was the hardest year of my life, but that's exciting because I actually have like an idea of what the heck I'm even going to be doing in 2016 rather than like, okay, please go back to the drawing board. So I just get excited about a fresh start. I'm a sucker for a new year. I'm a sucker for sitting down and writing down the new aspects of who I want to be. And I think that that is healthy. I think it's like a to-do list and you don't want to add too many things to it because, we're not looking to change your complete life. But it's nice when you can look back on where you've been and what you've done and say, this is a priority to me and I'm going to make the difference. And January 1 is the day. So I'm just really looking forward to a new year. 2016 sounds so sexy to me.
It does. And especially coming off like a big year, like you said you've had. I had a big year as well. I just found a journal from last year at this time and I was like, I was completely in a different place. I had no podcast on my radar. I had no site that the podcast went with on my radar. I was like quitting everything because I was like, I just feel like I can't do some of these things. And then the idea of starting something totally fresh was like, that's not going to happen. And it did. And so, I have no idea what's coming up and I'm excited about it. So that's good to hear. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed hearing from you. And I think, the lessons that you've learned and the things that people can pull out from this can apply whether somebody's a blogger or writer or whatever you're doing online. I feel like there are so many valuable pieces to kind of hearing how this has worked for you. So thank you for sharing those.
Absolutely. No problem. I would love to come back and thank you for having me, Kirsten.
Of course.
Almost over and the dark nights are closing in again.
Okay, I hope I'm leaving you feeling a little bit better, possibly, about building your platform and trying to handle all the different sites at one time. In other words, don't do it. So take Amy's advice and pick one and then really rock that. And then when you can expand, do that. I will admit that I don't always do that. I'm kind of everywhere and have a very small presence a few places and then really try to rock a few hard. I've been rocking Twitter pretty hard this year and Facebook groups, I've been growing that. I'm not a huge fan of my page. I do post, but that's mostly parenting stuff and I'm not willing to pay to play for that. So I just do kind of post when I want to and let it go. But I'd be interested to know what your social platforms of choice are. So visit the show notes and leave me a comment letting me know where you feel like you're rocking it, where you want to grow this year. So again, createifwriting.com/032 and go visit Amy at SavvySexySocial.com and show her some love. Let her know you listened to the episode. She's usually super easy and quick to respond on Twitter. So I'd recommend finding her there. And also, if you're interested in starting one of these platforms and you don't know where to begin, she did a really great series this year on her YouTube channel on how to get started on basically all the platforms. So I will leave a link to that series as well in the show notes. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you will sign up for the Amplify Summit tomorrow, February 10th, and also for the free training that I'm doing next week on the 16th with Kirsten from Sweet Tea LLC, all about email engagement. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you have an inspired week.